But either way, this in this sutta is like his son Rahula, who was apparently 18 years old, asks the Buddha for advice on breath meditation, and then without any explanation, before giving him any advice on breath meditation, gives a huge elucidation of the entire technique of examining the body in terms of elements in numerous different ways, then lists 10 different practices on how to dispel the hindrances, and then eventually gives the breath meditation instructions. So from that, I surmise that it was reasonably important. So yeah, that's kind of the background. Yeah, and then in terms of the actual content of the session, yeah, I'm planning on the kind of the opening introductory relaxation kind of stage to be kind of like a conceptual contemplation almost, which is kind of one level that this practice works on. So it's going to be quite, feel free to actually use your imagination to just think about the way that you think about the world and how the body is, and just it's quite imaginative. And then from there, we'll segue more into like a direct experiential thing. It's like a broad trajectory. And then in terms of the elements, what I actually mean by that in these contexts, they're the traditional elements of earth, water, fire, wind. I like the four embodied elements, and there's like space, which they all kind of are contained in. And then we'll see how we go, because then the kind of the extension in Buddhist practice kind of continues into consciousness after that contemplation. And we are going to use them more as a literal meaning of just like what are the earthly elements within the body, what are the watery elements, and we're going to use this as a really broad bucket of a conceptual framework. So we're really going to be leaving aside any recent scientific developments for sure. Like this, it kind of helps for us to use this really broad, simple framework, just because we can simplify it into a meditative mode of looking more easily. Which you'll see what I mean in a minute, but we will start off with quite a simplistic conceptual idea. So yeah, we'll be seeing like the bones as earth, and like the flesh probably as earth, and the food we eat as earth, and so on. So it's going to be quite simple, but it does lead to some quite interesting conclusions at least. So, and then later, you're absolutely right, we'll move into the more like, yeah, the earth will be the more weighty, solid seeming sensations. The breath will be the air element, that kind of thing. And yeah, I guess maybe just so you're not disappointed, we're going to focus in this session mostly on yeah, earth, wind, and space in the body. Like water and fire, we didn't even cover them on this 2-day retreat, so I don't feel too bad about leaving them out of this meditation. But yeah, it seems like to get the practice going, at least this weekend, we were recommended to work with those three, so I'll focus on that this session. Cool, anything else? Nice. Yeah, I guess we can get ready for meditation. Putting the body in an appropriate position, maybe finishing any mouthfuls of food you may still have. And as we start to settle in, we're just checking in on the gross position of the body, making sure all of the body parts are happy in their place. Maybe we'll start off the practice with a bit of gratitude, just thanking the body for its hard work today, or for the hard work it's about to begin, depending on your time zone. But even sitting at a desk, because the body doesn't necessarily appreciate it, so you can just be really giving some gratitude for for its continued hard work, maybe working from head to toe, bathing each part in gratitude as we go. Thanking the eyes for continuing to see, the nose for continuing to smell, ears for hearing, working our way down through the body, thanking each part for doing its best. And just relax any tension we find on our way. Okay, maybe we can broadly check in with the arms, just feeling through the arms. Broadly checking in with the legs. Maybe broadly checking in with the torso, joining in with the arms and legs, relaxing any tension we find. And then including the head once again. And really now we just want to bathe the whole body in gratitude, tuning into any sense of well-being we find. And if this is at all difficult, then just being grateful for almost anything that we find available would be helpful, and just being grateful for that thing. Maybe it's friends, family, pets. That one nice thing the stranger did the other day. So keep on settling and relaxing, being thankful and tuning into any sense of well-being that might be available. Before moving on to the next section, we can just take a few moments to just let the direction of our gratitude radiate outwards. Maybe, as a form of metta, just hoping that others may get to experience the things for which we are grateful. Inviting them into this gentle, warm bath of gratitude. So from here, we'll begin our contemplation of the elements. Consider that Earth is all things hard, the rocks, the mountains, and the things that grow from the earth, the trees, the plants, so hard and have substance and depend on the earth. The things that are made from earth are also the earth, which will include the ground which we stand on, the buildings we sit within, with the artificial floors on which our chairs rest, and the chairs themselves are all earth. Feel free to use any imagination that comes to mind or associations to fill out this world in your own way. So if the plants are hard and are earth themselves, then we take in earth to our body multiple times per day, and then many of the important constituents of our body, which we would consider to be earth also. So the bones are earth, the ligaments, teeth, very hard, made of earth, the hard minerals and so on. Obviously without the earth element, we couldn't constitute the flesh also, including muscles and skin. There's some earth involved at least, even if water plays a part. So in our worldview we find the earth both outside and inside, in exchange, eating meals, giving some of the material back each day, keeping some for later to constitute the body, of hair which grows out and falls out, we have nails which grow and fall, returning to the earth gradually. Skin flaking off and returning. I feel this cycle of earth coming in, earth coming out. Knowing that eventually all of our earth will be returned. And similarly, water. Water we know flowing in streams, rivers, rain, the ocean, waves, stored as clouds, mist. The water found outside is also found inside. It's the water we drink, constituting the blood, helping to constitute the flesh, returning to the environment as sweat, tears. Just taking a moment to imagine this water system flowing outside, entering the body, leaving the body with one system. Water flowing outside, water flowing inside, various forms. And again, in the sum of it we lose and gain each day, knowing eventually that all of it will eventually be returned. Thinking now about the wind, the movement in the air, the movement of the finer things, finer dust, leaves and so on, storms moving greater things, just a disturbance in space almost, just a sense of motion. That we know by feeling and seeing the results, but they're not necessarily the cause. But the wind itself we can't see, but the results we do feel. Wind moving outside. Noticing also that we depend on the wind or air to survive, so we take in air with each breath, returning to the outside each breath. The air outside and inside are the same. We think finally of fire, the heat, the sense of warmth, which we feel from fire itself, from the sun. Sense of radiant warmth. And the sense of heat that arises from within. Both the same sense of heat, both heat outside and inside. We can also include the sense of feeling of like the digestion of food in this category. This kind of chemical processes could also be included in fire. And take a moment to reflect on how external heat and internal heat is the same heat. We both give and take from the same system of fire. And finally acknowledge that both breath and heat will both be returned in full to the outside when we pass. And acknowledge that of these four elements, external and internal, they are the same. They constitute the body, are in constant exchange between the body and the environment. making the body part of this larger system. You can start to connect this contemplation with our current experience of the body. Feeling that we're resting on the earth in some form. Knowing, feeling that sense of connection between the body, maybe it's the chair made of some earth-like constituents, or maybe you're on the actual floor. Feeling the connection with the earth, you start to feel that heaviness of the body and those material connections. And the weight of the physical body particularly we want to tune into now. This kind of peaceful, heavy simplicity of earth-like, heavy quality we find in the body. And as we identify these material, kind of solid seeming perceptions, it's worth just knowing it as earth. This is the element of earth. Which, as we were contemplating before, is both the same inside and outside. A sense of substantiality and weight. Also, notice that this body, this earth, is also breathing. So the sense of movement and the sensory evidence of breathing. So we have wind entering the body. Maybe most prominently felt at the nostrils, throat maybe. Expansion of the lungs. Knowing this incoming, outgoing wind. It's both the same inside and outside. It's the same air. And just hanging out with those sensations. Not only the breath, but the breath energy can be conceived of as wind. So maybe the physical breath is limited to the nostrils, but the breath energy is a lot more malleable. See if you can conceive of the breath entering and leaving through the whole body, just gently opening the aperture of your awareness to include more of the body, and just conceive of or visually imagine, as appropriate, the breath energy being free to move in this bodily space, entering and leaving through the skin. If that makes little sense to you, feel free to stick with the embodied sense of wind or breath energy that you can find. But otherwise, feel free to play with the breath energy and feel it flowing in through the skin, into the body and out through the skin. See if you can get a feel of this wind-like quality. There's any increased sense of well-being arising from this way of perceiving the body, feel free to rest in that as you continue to explore the breath energy. Just releasing deeper as the breath comes in and out. it's possible that there could be an increase in energy, which could be an opportunity to perceive the element of fire. So any warmth, any tingling, any buzzing can be interpreted as the fire element. And if that's enjoyable, then feel free to go right ahead and perceive that as fire. On the contrary, if that has become too intense and too hot, too fiery, feel free to introduce the coolness of water. You can use the mental image of this cool, refreshing sensation to counter the high energy. So if energy levels are a thing for you right now, then feel free to play with those elements. Otherwise, I'm sure the breath will welcome you back. Having explored the 4 primary elements, we'll now look for space. There are a few ways to find the space, such as the nostrils, ear holes. Maybe you can feel space kind of implied, where you feel your clothing, a sense of space between the body and the clothing. This is a relatively refined sensation, the space which contains the other elements. If this one is difficult, then maybe just focusing on one of those examples that I gave, like just gently being with the nostrils as the breath comes in and out, and recognizing that the place where you've put your attention is actually outside the body. Just resting in and appreciating the sense of space to whatever depth you're able to. And if it's somewhat frustrating and impossible, then feel free to drop back to the sense of wind in the body. And just appreciating that maybe the body's edges are not so obvious, and where the wind energy finishes and starts is up for debate. Space can be perceived as simply a lack of resistance or boundary. And so anywhere where there isn't a strong sensation telling you where the boundary is, awareness just continues. Just simply open. And to point to the final element of our exploration, I will ask you, what is aware of these elements? Is there a source of knowing, or final location of awareness? Or do we simply find the elements? And that brings us to the end of our exploration for the evening. I would suggest slowly returning to our shared space.